On this episode, we have such a fun story to share with you that's going to leave you inspired, but also taking action, which is our heart for the show. That doesn't just give you information, but it gives you things you can take action on. And this story has been one we've just totally watched unfold. And it's been inspiring to us because when this particular person you're about to hear from came into our world, she had a goal. She had a very specific goal. And we saw her actually not just reach that goal, but thrive in the process. And so we want to talk about this journey because if you're listening to the show, you probably have some goals, whatever that goal is for your family. But how can you be specific about it? How can you make it happen, make it a reality? And so on the show today, we have Madelyn Hanson. Welcome to the show, Madelyn.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Stephen and Chelsea. It's truly an honor.
So awesome. Now, reading your bio, we learned a lot of things about you. Now, disclaimer, we live in the same town. We've kind of like overlapped a couple, times during our lives in our town, right? It's a smaller town. You can't like do Chico without having mutual friends, right? But reading your bio, I feel like we learned so much more about you. You actually grew up not in Chico, grew up in the South, and then decided at age 22 to move across the country to the West Coast with just $2,000 in your pocket. So I want to start there because that to me is like the spark of an entrepreneur, right? Like I'm going to make this thing happen. I'm not sure how. I don't have everything figured out, but I'm going to take a step of faith. Tell us about that decision. When you just bring us back to what you're thinking, when you're 22 years old, $2,000 in the bank, what was that thing? I was like, I can do this.
Well, I believe that I've always had a heart for adventure and for travel, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I was a bit of an optimist and a risk taker. And so I was able to form my decision around not just the what if bad things happened, but what if it was wonderful? And then also evaluating the worst case scenario. So from packing up my car in Georgia and visiting a friend who had invited me to come stay with her, I said, well, the best that could happen is I'm going to adventure the West Coast. And the worst that could happen is I'll come home. No big deal. My money will be gone and I'll just have to start over. So I wasn't afraid of what the worst case scenario was because I was able to frame it around a positive outcome.
That's awesome. Now, when you came to Chico, what was that first step to like, okay, you have $2,000, you move across the West Coast, you're living with a friend or so there's some sort of friend connection that brought you here. What was the first step to like not just drain your bank account and then have to go home? Where did you lean into first as a 22-year-old?
Well, I had just graduated with a degree in music education, so I just started applying for different positions and working some odd jobs, and I just figured out a way to make ends meet and just started getting a small paycheck and just living within my means. And I guess at the time, it just didn't bother me that some days I'd have to eat ramen noodles and go to, when I had stuff with my friends, I would just order a little bit less because I knew that I was on the adventure of a lifetime and I was exploring and I was getting to make my own decisions and make my own way. And so I eventually ended up as a music director at a local private school. And that really solidified my beginning of really falling in love with the West Coast.
Wow, that's awesome. What I thought was super cool about your journey, you have a lot of experience in kind of a foot in both doors, right? You kind of have a foot in the 9 to 5 world with like more of, let's say, the typical careers, the corporate kind of roles, but also like you've worked your way up in those roles. But then you've also always had your foot in this entrepreneurial world, right? Like being a sales director for a cosmetic company, and now with your e-commerce brand, selling physical products. Was the entrepreneurship thing always there, or was that something that like you always wanted to build the side hustle, or did it come from this goal? I'm trying to figure out where the entrepreneurial spark came from in you, because I feel like once it sparked, it just kind of like it spread very fast.
Well, I feel like I've always been a bit of an independent person and driven, and also challenge myself to go above and beyond. And I was always trying to be the best I could be in school. And then in any position I was in, I was always trying to be the best. And I think that I realized it was honestly after my parents' passing that I was like, I can't just live life according to other people's rules or working my 8 to 5 so that I'm filling up somebody else's dream and their bank accounts. And I just had, as I went throughout my years, I realized that after they passed away, my life became so much shorter and that I really needed to take the reins on my own life, that I didn't want to work for anyone else. So I had to figure out how to work for myself.
That's awesome. Like using something that obviously was hard, like losing, our parents, both of our parents are still here living, and I can't imagine like losing them. So that would make you, I think, reevaluate like where you're going and where you're heading. So you used a hard thing, in grieving and all that to push you forward. And I would love to hear like what perked your interest or what made you decide to, I'm going to go into e-commerce and I'm going to build this brand. And where did that passion and that desire for the kinds of products that you're getting out into the world, where did that start or come from?
Well, in my 20s, I would always dream of having a beach home as my retirement. And then in the 4 years between 27 and 31, my father passed away. I married my husband. I had my daughter, and then my mom passed. And I decided to change things. And that was when I started creating my vision boards and this new, like, I want to create a life that my family is thriving started. And I think I was saying it to you earlier, Stephen, that I started this whole vision where I would put screensavers of the beach. I redecorated in a beach theme. I had met with real estate agents, but I kept hitting all of these walls, and my 8 to 5 just wasn't cutting it. My dream was far from reality. I was in debt. And throughout my whole process of manifesting and believing, I kept saying, when I'm 40, I'll have a vacation home. When I'm 40, I'll have a vacation home. So what lit the fire was when 2020 hit and I was turning 40 in 11 months and I was not there. And I felt this fire light inside me. It was in my blood. I was like, my vacation home is not for my 60s. It's for my 40s. What am I doing? So I met with somebody who I saw was having a successful side hustle in e-commerce, which was Nicole. And her and I had a similar work ethic and a similar faith. And I trusted the process because I had seen her. And so the trust, along with knowing there was a family with me in the Rainmaker family process and the journey, I all of a sudden had these guts and this faith to just go all in, because this was my last ditch effort. Like 40 was coming and I wasn't there. So I decided, whatever I'm going to do, this is going to be for my family. I'm going to create a small business that's named after the Blue Zone Living, is after people who live in coastal communities and live longer because of their faith and their culture. And I named my brand after the ocean, so that it's constantly reminding me of that. And I, was telling all of my friends, by the time I'm 40, I'm going to have a vacation home. And so I wanted to make my why the center. And honestly, that was another spark of entrepreneurship, when I really, truly knew who I was and what my why was, going really deep into the heart of who I am. Because I feel like the catch to successful entrepreneurs is psychologically not being able to endure the hardships if you don't have a deep-seated purpose and a heartfelt reason and a why that propels you through the adversity. Because I found that why when my parents passed away, and it changed my future. And when the why is so deep and you know who you are and what you want, you have a sense of urgency, and a sense of energy brings miracles and dreams to life.
That's so awesome, because you were saying that you had this dream of I want to have this beach house. Like, I want to have this beach house for our family, to leave a legacy to my kids and their kids.
And not just like, a shack on the beach. You were like, I want $1 million beachfront property. You were specific.
Yeah.
And, I think even like the $1 million mark, like some people, you were very specific about like how much, what it needed to be, more of a luxury home. Like you didn't want to settle. And I think that's absolutely incredible. Like you had not just a goal, but beyond that, like you had the next thing, where sometimes people almost like settle, and yeah.
Yeah. Like, and what I was saying is like, you had this goal for 10 years, 10 plus years, right? But then you saw it really like hockey stick in the last, you said year, basically year. Like you kind of, did it make you question yourself of being like, could I have done this sooner? Or do you feel like stuff that happened in the 10 years really built on itself to get you to the place to make it happen? What do you think? Like, could it have happened sooner, or was it like it building up until the right timing, right point? You know, it's hard to think through it, but I'm always like, how can we accelerate our goals, right? For our audience. And if you can take a 10-year goal and do it in a year, why not? So there could be some clues in here. So what would you say to that?
Well, I would say that everything happens for a reason. And I am grateful for my journey. And something that I have learned is that it is a process, and learning to enjoy the process, because the process becomes part of your goal as well. It's a journey, not a destination. And figuring out how to make money work for me happened when I started my own e-commerce business. I will say that I truly wish I had found it 10 years ago, because I feel like it is possible that I could have done it in a year and a half, 10 years ago. But I have seen in the last year and a half that those 10 years helped propel me. And it's kind of like when you're working on like a project or something. They're like, you have a month to do it, and then you wait till the last day, and it really only takes you a day.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if you had done one project every day for that month, you would have had 30 projects done. So that's kind of how I look at it. That I see this as an opportunity to dream even more. And it's interesting. Some people would say to me, why are you shopping for big houses? Just go inland, just shop for small condos. Why so big? And I would say, because Jesus loves me, God wants to bless our family with health, wealth, prosperity, and the deepest desires of our hearts. And I would pray that with my family every night. God wants to bless our family with health, wealth, and prosperity, and the deepest desires of our hearts. And I wasn't going to let anyone tell me any different.
I love it.
That's awesome.
And this year, officially, you guys signed the papers. Like, I've seen the photos. Like,
I've seen you on the beach.
The property
with your family.
is real, and it's crazy. I think you tagged us in a video that, like, we have when people come to our challenge, we ask them, hey, what would passive income mean to your family? What are some of your goals? And even in your first video, it's like you have like a beach in the background, and you're like, I'm gonna do this thing. And it's crazy how much has happened. And since that time till now, global pandemics, travel shutting down. You launch a travel brand in the midst of a pandemic. It's like, it's truly miraculous, but it's also like you had a huge step of faith in a season when a lot of people didn't, have faith, right? You planted in the right ground when people were holding on to their stuff as much as they could. Like, I think, and that probably came from even just that first step of faith as a 22-year-old, right?
Mm-hmm.
That same kind of thing, same spirit, just probably a higher level, of like, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to step out, even though it's scary. Did you have a similar mindset of like, did you run the worst case scenario this time around? Because I know you said as a 22-year-old, you're like, oh, I'll just go home. But with the e-commerce brand, was there any way out, or was it kind of just like, hey, I'm doing this thing?
Well, my husband wasn't totally on board, because he was like, okay, here's another, thing that is another adventure. And I just said, well, I promise that I will not affect our family finances. So I applied for a business credit card that just has $5,000 on it. And I said, worst case scenario, I'll just have to pay this off, and there might be some percentages. So I was able to utilize that $5,000 credit card because of the promise I made to my husband. And when I was looking into what I was going to sell, I went straight to, the manufacturers and found the ones that all in, the max was 5,000. I was like, that's what I have. Can you make me a deal? How much can you get me? This is my limit. And so I just utilized what I had. And I think I paid that thing off like 3 or 4 times buying inventory. But by the end of that year, I was just shocked, and the fuel was there even more, because we had generated over 6 figures in less than 6 months. So it was just really a dream come true. And, I would say too, with the pandemic, I saw it as an opportunity, not a roadblock. And even more did it make me want my family to thrive. like in a pandemic, you're thinking everyone's going to perish, but I was like, not us. We are going to survive, and not just survive, but thrive in this environment.
That's amazing. That's like that mindset right there, like you have choices. We all have choices, and how we react to chaos and really hard things. And you're choosing to like, we're going to plant our flag and we're going to thrive in all of this. So way to go. That's super exciting. So like Steven mentioned, you guys have your beachfront property. We've seen the photos. It's beautiful. I'm so proud of you and happy that you guys have this. I know you guys, I feel like you were just there, or at least I saw something on Instagram. I want to know now that this huge accomplishment that you've talked about for a long time, what are your next goals? How are you taking what you've done now and propelling yourself forward? Are there next things that you're dreaming of? What is around the corner are you feeling like for this year for you and your family in this thriving, and now that you have this beautiful property?
Well, I know that when I was following this whole process, I saw God's hand in it, and just you could say I saw God's hand, but I just saw things I couldn't explain, miracles that would happen, doors that would open up. And initially, when I first found this home, I had been searching for months, but I was awakened in the middle of the night, and I just prayed, what am I awake for? I don't know if you've ever done that. Why am I awake? And I thought I heard something say, you need to look at beach homes. And I was like, really? Now? Well, there aren't any left in my budget, because I had a certain budget. And then I just felt like I heard, well, then look over budget and dream bigger. So I opened up my app and I started looking at the $1 million homes. And so, long story short, there were all these miracles that happened along the way. We actually weren't supposed to be able to afford it, and then mountains were moved. And so one thing that it's taught me is to take it a step further in your dreaming. So now it's not one property on the coast of Texas. It's a California property next, or a Georgia coast property, or a Florida coast property, because I want to travel. And that's really what the dream is, to live in prosperity and be able to share more of those gems that are in our world with people. So that's really the next step for me. It's definitely, still part of the journey. I don't feel like I've arrived, by having this home, because there's a lot to take care of. And now you have another mortgage and you have all these bills. But I feel like the mindset that I learned as an entrepreneur has helped me propel through these objectives. For example, there was one issue with some banking when we were in contract. And I just thought to myself, I sell private label e-commerce. I eat banking problems like this for breakfast. And sure enough, I called enough people and resolved the problem before breakfast. So I feel like the mindset of seeing objections and seeing problems as a sign of success is, negative reviews, copycats, competitive things. It's when you're willing to outwork and outfight your competitors, you move closer to the top. I've seen that the mountaintop isn't just for people who are, higher up in their knowledge or skills, or even more lucky. I see now that the peak of a mountain is for those who are climbing and fall down and just keep getting up. It's not like, oh, you have to have some special knowledge or some special training or some special skill or some special luck. It's really getting back up again and taking small decisions every single day. And so having that mindset, I feel like the sky's the limit when you're able to put that on a goal. And so I also have a goal to instill that in my family. That would be the next step, is to help teach my children that. And, I used to think that retirement was work for 30 or 40 years in your hamster wheel and then do nothing at 60. So ultimate goal is to learn how to make money work for me. So it's not a work and a stop. It's just enjoying life, like all your decades of life, not establishing that your 60s have to be your relaxation. So I truly want that for my family.
I love you sharing in the journey and like talking about, it's not just about the arriving at the mountaintop. It's just continuing. And now you're like, I have more ground to take, and here we go. And here is how I'm going to enjoy life. And I think so many people can relate with the retirement as being the end all be all, and Steve and I, we're entrepreneurs. And I don't think we'll ever retire. We might retire a business, like we stepped out of weddings and, moving forward, but I think we'll always be doing something and building and being pioneers in leaving a legacy. And so we totally relate with you. Well, at least the three of us will never retire.
Yeah, it might look different, but for sure. What are you doing with your kids now? Like, are you planning anything? Like, as far as, you said imparting kind of this mindset, the knowledge, like, have you seen sparks of entrepreneurship in them, or even if they're not going to be full on self-employed entrepreneurs, but just having that mindset? How have you been trying to instill that in your family?
Well, I feel like for many years, my husband and I both were working in a corporate world where it was go, 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 and then get home, and then you're stressed out. So you don't really have as much time for them. So in the last year specifically, we've made it a point to, when we're done, we're done. Like, I have my schedule. When I'm done, I'm done. And then when I pick my daughter up, I help her with her homework, or I spend more time with her. And I look back on those so many years of working and not doing that, and I'm just so grateful to find it now, the like undivided attention. And I've seen a shift in them when we took a trip to Texas to look at homes over the summer, and I have a almost 17-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they said in all of 2021 that was their most favorite thing, because what we did was we stopped our work and we just spent time with them. And so just seeing them say, my favorite thing was sitting in a car for 6,000 miles with my parents. I mean, it could have been a nightmare, but I've really seen a change in them saying, I want more of that. And, something that I did too, when I was in the season of hustling, when I first started my e-commerce, because I was doing that outside of my 8 to 5, was I would share with them our goal. I would say, Mommy's got to work late tonight because of the beach house, honey. And so she'd ask me, are we closer? Are we closer, Mom? Are you done working? And so it really helped them become part of the dream, because they were part of the sacrifice also. Just saying, thank you for, leaving Mommy alone. Mommy's doing this for our beach house, for our family. And they were like, okay, great. So that helped them be part of it too.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so sweet. And seeing, like, I think probably the most powerful thing is them seeing you have a goal and reach it, you know? And just like, I feel like as soon as I started getting around entrepreneurs that had reached big goals, whereas like, they had this thing and they reached for it and they were able to achieve it, it almost like makes it possible for me to see other people do it. And how much more so with your kids, for them to see you go, $1 million property, like when they're older, maybe $1 million will be less than it is now. But like, just be like, hey, back then, $1 million is a lot of money. Hopefully it is still. Hopefully inflation doesn't get too crazy, but you know what I mean? Like, but for them to see this massive goal, and just see you totally crush that goal and bring them in the process, I think is so empowering for them, just to know, like, that's my mom, that's so cool.
Yeah. And I even think, like, not just your kids and everything, but I love seeing you how you documented the journey in Rainmakers too. I think you've made people level up their thinking as far as like, well, and not that it's about like all the things and that in Rainmakers by any means, but it is like, it's not just a beach house. It's the time with your family in the beach house, and it's leaving it for them, for your grandkids and your future grandkids, like my great grandma Madelyn or whatever, hustled for this thing, and there's story and there's grit. And so I think that that's beautiful. Like, sometimes our dreams are too small in a lot of ways, and it's okay to have wild, audacious goals, but you also put the time in and did the thing. You didn't just dream and sit back and do nothing and stay comfortable. You know, your journey, like there are highs and lows in your Amazon journey and e-commerce, and some product launches did better than others. And you still picked yourself back up and said, I'm going to put it in the time and I'm going to be dedicated. And this is going to be worth it.
Well, and I feel like too, this was something that was part of the legacy for my parents really shifted me, because I wanted to honor them, and my down payment was from my dad's life insurance. And so I wanted to honor him. So I pretended like it didn't exist for 14 years. And we actually, when we first placed the offer on the house, someone else offered $50,000 more than we did. But I wrote a letter to them sharing that this house was for my parents, and they chose us because they wanted to honor my parents and our future legacy. And, what's crazy is I didn't feel like I arrived when I first got there. It was a couple days later, I sat in the sunset, watching the sunset, and I just started talking to my mom and dad. And it was like they were present and enjoying it with me. And like, no one can take that away from me. I have a home with my parents, and I'm able to honor them, and they're able to be now part of our future as well. So it was a place of grieving I didn't know I needed. And I think that drove me as well, from the inside.
Wow, that's a valuable letter you wrote there. I'm like, dang, $50,000 letter. Oh, wow, that's powerful. Way to go for the people who read that and felt the heart in it, and the impact even they could have in blessing your family with taking that offer. Like, that's so cool. I think we went to a friend's family cabin. Like we did just a little family retreat with them, and it was, I think their great grandparents maybe built the cabin, just actually put in the time to build the cabin way back when. And it's been their family line, for generations. And when you go to the cabin, they have like a little loft area, and it's all like wood. It's like an old wood cabin, but like in the wood is like people will like scratch their whatever names. And it's like Tyler and Megan engaged here, like Tyler proposed to Megan. It's like all these like memories of like this person's first birthday and this thing. And it's like all this like family legacy is in the walls of this place. And that place, it was built a long time ago, but it still like has this legacy that's blessing. I don't know how many families share this cabin now at this point, because it's like, siblings, and then they grow, but it's just like, it's pretty amazing how one seed, right, can feed, can create orchards, so to say. And this one dream that you fought for, that you had breakthrough on, that your parents were so much involved in too, in their legacy continue on. I believe like it'll be so cool to see your kids continue on that legacy and their kids continue on that legacy. And man, that's exciting.
Yeah.
A couple really cool things that happened when I first arrived too is next to the coffee pot was a canister of my dad's favorite coffee.
Wow.
From a couple states over, like a Louisiana brand with chicory, and I just was like crying when I saw it.
Yeah.
And then they had these huge throw pillows in the middle of the great room that said, "I need vitamin C."
Wow. And that's your brand name on Amazon.
Yeah, on Amazon. And then, what's crazy too, Stephen, is that when my offer was accepted, I was 10 days left in my 40th year. So it was like the final hour of me saying, when I'm 40, I'm going to have a vacation home. When I'm 40, I'm going to have a vacation home. And I had 10 days to spare. So it's amazing what manifesting can do.
That's so awesome.
Cool. I love that. Oh, well, thank you so much, Madelyn, for being on today and sharing with our audience just your story of grit and perseverance and dreaming big. I love all the details that you put in there, and legacy. I'm so excited for you and your family, and looking forward to seeing some more of your upcoming vacations at this beautiful home. But if our listeners want to get in contact with you or learn more about like your brand or even purchasing your amazing products that you have going on, where can they connect with you?
Well, I have Instagram is Vitamin C Living. And then on Facebook, it's Blue Zone Living. And then I also have an Amazon store that is my vitamin C brand. If anyone wants to check out the travel products that were inspired by the dream.
Awesome. So cool. Make sure to check those out and support Madelyn. But thank you so much for being on. It was so fun to chat with you more.
Thank you.